Welcome to the Piedmont Triad Podcast.
Before I get too old, I'm gonna head down to Muscle Shoals. Baby, you can meet me at the station.
Welcome to another episode of the Piedmont Triad Podcast, where we talk about the strange and unusual people and places of the Piedmont Triad, North Carolina area. I'm your host, David Locklear, and today we are talking with Tony from the Den Music Club. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Good,
Thanks
good.
for having me.
Yeah. Glad we could finally get together. It was a long time coming.
Yeah.
For everyone who is wondering, I got wiped out with some bizarro sickness that put me on my back for about 8 days, and we had to reschedule this interview twice because I didn't want to come spreading my plague in your fancy establishment, you know. But tell us about the Den. How did this get started?
I was bailing a friend out, honestly. So it was right after, not of jail, of a show.
Okay.
There's a distinction there. But this was right after the stay-at-home order lifted.
Right.
And they had a show in Raleigh, I believe, and there was some issue with the venue, that there was like some spark of violence or something like that was outside of that venue. Didn't actually happen at a show, but one of the bands that was on that tour package, their label was like, hey, we can't, there's like a cool down period of acts of violence or whatnot. We don't want to have our investment, our artists at this venue for X amount of time. And they didn't want to cancel the show. And so it was, he was asking me at the time. I had 2 warehouses in Lexington that I built sets for and did lighting for music videos. I didn't shoot the videos. I would just build the sets and lights for. And he wanted to move the show there. They were gigantic. They were like 50 by 130 feet each. Like, they're gigantic warehouses.
Yeah.
But they were in Lexington, and no one wants to go to Lexington. So, especially whenever the original show was from Raleigh. So, it was on a Thursday, I believe. And so I was like, okay, you know what? Change cities. That'll cut your attendance in half, and it's a weekday. That'll cut it in half again, and then we're changing to a house show, which, to be fair, I've actually never played a house show. So I moved to Winston in 2010 to play music, and the entire time I never played a house show. So I did not know how house shows have a community behind them.
Yeah.
But so I was thinking that there wasn't going to be a lot of people that show up just because it's at a house. So we had this. It was raining, and I was like, all right, that's even less people now that's not going to show up. And I just set up my detached garage, and with everything, that was completely wrong. I mean, there was probably 40, 50 people there. And it was packed, and it was a great time. It was really, really cool. However, every single person there was like, hey, how can I play a show? When can I do a show here? Like, are you going to do more? And I was not prepared for that. And so after getting so many requests, I was like, you know what? I'll just do one every other month. Mm-hmm. You know, I have the land, I have the property. We don't bother anybody. Yeah. And I'll do one every other month. And then after a few months, the demand kept going. So I was like, okay, I'll do like once a month. And then it was after about a year, I was like, I won't do more than one every other week. And then, so now, like, you know, last year was my busiest year ever. And that was 26 shows, including the 4 at the new location, because we transitioned over in October because we had that weird cold snap. Mm-hmm. You know, my original idea was to finish out the year at the house and then start 2024 at the new spot. But it just got really cold, so I was afraid that it was going to impact the show. Right. Because it was an indoor-outdoor thing. Mm-hmm. So you just opened the garage door, played out in the woods. Yeah. But this year I have 41 before June. Goodness. And as of right now, I'm booked every Friday, Saturday till November.
Right on.
Yeah. It's cool. I think getting the bands and artists in here is not necessarily the hardest. I mean, I think the idea of, or the knowledge that I give 100% of the door to the artists, has kind of spread around. So people, you know, people are like, hey, if I go to this one venue, they'll take $200 off the top, and then it's a 70-30 split.
Yeah.
But over here, it's just we get everything. Don't work with the promoters because of that. Or if I do work with the promoter, that we have an understanding that they're not going to take anything from the artist that night. But yeah, that's kind of how it happened. It was just I lucked up into it, and in October of 2022, the reason why we transitioned was because we had a lot of good luck.
Yeah.
And we were running off of goodwill of others, of not coming in and like messing things up, especially because we are old ages. Because I have 3 kids. We talked about earlier before we started. You have a kid.
Yeah.
And she was 10 at the time, and she's like, "Hey, this girl's on our couch." It's a detached garage. So the road ends, my gravel driveway begins, you go down, it's like a half-mile driveway just to get to my front yard and my house where people parked.
Yeah.
And then you walked an extra 200, 300 feet behind my house to the garage where I had all these lights set up and everything like that.
Yeah.
And to call attention to, I had yard signs like telling people which way to go. So she had to walk like away from everybody. But we were like, you know what? That's a risk we can't take. Yeah. We're done. Either we're not going to do the den, or we're going to do it in a place where I can, have insurance. And
right.
And also because it's a house, like legally I couldn't charge for anything. I couldn't charge for the door. People could walk in if that was their prerogative and not donate anything.
I didn't think about that. That's a
because
good point.
I would be running a business out of a house for an assembly. I couldn't legally say, "Hey, you can't come in without paying."
Yeah.
So it would be like, please donate. I never really had too many jerks about like, well, I'm not going to give $10 for these 4 bands. And for the first 2 years, I did it for $5.
Oh, wow.
And then it took me a while to get up the courage to double the price of a big $10, which is still nothing.
Yeah.
But for me, I'd established a history of it's $5. But as soon as I did that, that's double the band payout.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I'm not giving $20, a $20 bill to these bands. I'm giving $40, which is still not much in the grand scheme of things. But no one bucked at it. No one,
Yeah, and when you're a band, I mean, that little bit makes a difference. And it really does. And I think people who are genuine about wanting to support a scene like this are not going to have too much of a problem with $10.
No. And to be candid, we're struggling right now, but that's just because getting the name out. I mean, you don't make money the first year of owning a business anyway. Now that we're LLCing, paying city stuff, getting all the proper permits, paying insurance, like all of that stuff. Like, but that's because of that. Like, and me not taking any money from the door.
Yeah.
But I have so many bands, like, you just take some. And I'm like, no, that's kind of that's not what I'm doing. That's not, like, we're okay, we're fine. Like, I print shirts to kind of help offset the overhead. And my wife, has this studio, which is gorgeous,
Yeah.
that we're in.
Beautiful.
Like, and it's super cozy, and that's paying for it and whatnot. So, like, but I mean, I probably have more artists tell me to take a cut than people are upset about $10. I had 2 weeks ago, I had a $25 show. That was not my idea, but I mean, it was Sammy Rash and D-Rod. They're very feel good, social media, kind of surfer, beachy vibes. Solo artists. I mean, Sammy Rash has 1.5 million monthly listeners on Spotify. D-Rod is actually from Raleigh. And this is the last stop on his tour with him. And I think he has 510,000, 506,000 monthly listeners. So I was like, oh my gosh. I had people lining up at the door at 3:30 when doors were at 7.
Shit.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I was not prepared for any of that because they were like, yeah, no, we don't want any local support. We want to do this. And they're like, hey, we never really got an understanding of what the venue cut was. And I'm like, well, I don't take anything from the door. And they're like, I'm sorry. How do you? It's like, but it was a great. I mean, the Den has kind of unintentionally become synonymous with this like underground punk feel, because it is. I mean, the header on my Facebook for forever was a DIY punk house venue, so I kind of get it. But you know, we're not flashy. We don't have all of this other stuff that you know, that can support like these gigantic bands. We've had a couple ska bands with like horn sections and stuff, which was phenomenal. It was really cool, you know, having a sousaphone in like my garage that was still at the house. Like it was like this. It was wild. Like I mean, but like I've met so many new artists that are here and afar. I mean, I made not a Kickstarter, but a GoFundMe video. The drummer for my band, Will, he made the video for me and knocked it out of the park. But it was, I think at the time I had like 92 different artists, and 40 of them were from out of the state. Like I mean,
that's really impressive.
Yeah, I used to have people come, and we released that video in September of last year. So, but that. It blows my mind that I had people that would play at the Den the first time, and then every time they're in the Southeast, bands from Michigan and bands from Arizona, bands from Florida that would come up from Fest, and they would come through North Carolina just to play at my house, and that's awesome. It was really cool. But also, like my family and my kids have gotten to know music. My oldest is about to turn 16, so they're like, you know, getting into this. They were taking guitar lessons, and now they've transitioned over to taking bass lessons, which is really funny because they're like, I don't have anything to play, to do a bass lesson on. I was like, are you serious? You have all of my bass guitars and my bass rig. But they're enjoying that a lot. But they've really come out of their shell, like seeing young people, seeing older people that interact with young people without any type of hesitation and without any type of like gatekeeping and whatnot. Yeah. And it's really, really cool to see. And I've had bands, like Porch Coffin come through a few times, and every time they come, they pretty much stay at the house now. They would park it, last year, last year we had puppies. But they had some issues with their van, so they just hung out fixing their van one day on their off day, and they were just like hanging out with the puppies inside their van, and my kids were bringing them like cut up fruit, and they came back through this past January, and it was really cold, but they stayed in the basement this time, and my kids remembered that one of them was vegan, and they were like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, no, the band was like, oh my gosh, like this is so sweet. Like my kids just really wanted to go. They went to Walmart, they like got some fruit and they cut it up and they got some avocados and like gave it to them, and it was just, and one my 10-year-old just really wanted to make them like cinnamon rolls, but that wasn't vegan, so they had to get fruit for the other. Like, but it's been really, really cool for my family to kind of be involved in all of this, and also it's been really cool to see artists kind of recognize that this is the next generation, and they have conversations with not just my kids, but like also just anybody that comes through. I have one kid that since I've moved here to the new location, I don't know how he found out about it or whatnot, but his mom drops him off at almost every single show, and he just stays. And he just like hangs out, and he's one of the coolest kids, and he's starting to bring friends out. But like, I know that's kind of a harder sell, you know, if you're underage and you're at your high school or whatnot, like trying to get your friends to come out. Well, you know, transportation is, you know, weird, but like being all ages is so passionate for me, because when we take our oldest, the 10 and 13-year-old doesn't really go to a lot of shows, especially if my band's not playing.
Sure, yeah.
Just because they'll like come to see me play. Yeah. But they're just, I mean, when I was 10, 13, I was running around auditoriums too. Yeah. You know, they're not there for the show.
Yeah.
But whenever you're a little bit older, then you really can kind of get into it, and
you start to relate for some reason.
For sure, yeah. And you're not there. You are there for a community aspect, and that's a big part of the Den. Is the slogan that I've kind of landed on is where artists and community connect. Because that's the whole. I mean, I have a green room in the back of the Den, but that's more of a hey, tune your guitar strings, but things like that. Make sure you get your drum set set up. Mm-hmm. Make sure that your cymbals are on the stands, so you're not putting. So changeovers are really quick and whatnot. But I have a couch in there, but like the intent is not to have the artists hide in there.
Yeah,
and they're supposed to be out here. They're supposed to be connecting. They're supposed to be, networking. Like when Porch Coffin played at the house in September of last year, they played with a band from Raleigh, Greensboro called Boy Named Sue. And then this past January, they went on tour together.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
I was like, I can't speak that I am responsible for that. However, that's kind of the point. Mm-hmm. You're networking, you're like, hey, I like this band. Where are they from? We've been meaning to get up there. Maybe we can pull, or when they're down here, we can book a show so we can pull some people into their demographic, and that'll help them get new followers, and then it's just returning favors all over. I mean, I'm working with a couple bands right now that like they want to put together a North Carolina weekender set, to where if a band from out of town or out of the state wants to come in and hey, we want to do a weekend tour or whatnot, or like, how can we do this? I was like, well, let's hit up the Milestone in Charlotte. Let's go to the Den in Winston. Let's go to the Poorhouse, or something like that in Raleigh, or School Kids Records, like in Raleigh. Like there are these venues that have the same mentality, and they're all in different pocketed demographics, that will, we don't get a lot of Charlotte people up to the Den. Mm-hmm. We get some, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But for the most part, they're in Winston. They're in Greensboro, because that's your local artist. I mean, when I was playing from heavily in 2010 to 2015, 16, there's a lot of Greensboro people just never came to Winston. Winston would always go to Greensboro shows, because that's you had Green Street, you had NYP,
Blind Tiger,
Blind Tiger, which is now Hanger, but yeah, I mean, we would always have to go there, and now it's kind of flipped on its head, to where if you're wanting from ground level local artists that are one of the bands that there will be a famous band that has played at the Den before. That's not up for grabs. There's so much talent that has come through. It blows my mind. Like I get there. I'm like, this is really good. This is really, really good. And there are also off nights.
Yeah,
but off nights, as in these kids. I mean, for the most part, like they've never played out of their house. Yeah. They've never had the opportunity. Either they're going to pimp out 50 of their friends for a signed contract for a national act at a venue where they may or may not be ready for that type of like audience, if they haven't worked up to it. At $20 a ticket, and if they don't meet it, they're going to have to pay the difference. Like, and it's just, we've all been there. Like, that's just not what I'm trying to do.
I think Green Street was set up that way for the pay to play structure.
And I mean, I can't knock it too much, especially because, I mean, my bands, like, I've been fortunate to play with Our Last Night and Set It Off and A Day to Remember and The Almost and Red Jumps. Like and so that list is pretty massive with that caliber of bands. But we did have pre-sale tickets.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, a venue has already purchased basically this band to come. They got to recoup their losses. Like, so I understand that. But having that as the only opportunity can get very disheartening. And after a while, like, you just can't just continuously beg your friends for money.
Yeah.
You know, can you play this $25 ticket to see this? They may really want to support you, but they may not have any cause to see the rest of the artists on that bill. And that's not their fault. That's not your fault. But having that as the only option can really, and you get like what, $2 a ticket or something like that. You know, it's you're there for. It's just like whenever people, you know, you do something for the exposure or something. It's all that bullshit. So. Yeah,
that shit you fall for. We all fell for a long time.
For sure.
You know?
And I think this is the one good thing about social media, honestly, is I think everybody has realized they're all on the same page. It's like, this is stupid. Like, why? Like, and that's kind of the meme now is like, oh, we're doing it for the exposure. It's like, no. If you're my friend, you're going to want to pay me. Like, when I have friends do something for me, I pay them because I want to support them.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
Like, who am I to get their name out? That's stupid. Like, it's just me. Like, come on. Like, I mean, even I just made a post right before we started the podcast about having Den shirts on Instagram, and $20 here at the shop, or you can buy it on our big cartel for $25. But like, and I tagged my wife, who made the design, because if I had a friend that made that design, I would have paid them for that design. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
It's like, so I don't know. That whole getting it there for the exposure is just, and that's again having people play. Let's say 2 weeks ago, or a week ago, I had a show, and the payout between 4 bands was like $32.50 or something stupid like that. So I rounded up to 35. And this one band was like, "Wow, we're used to playing for free. This is awesome." Because I was sitting there apologizing because it wasn't more.
Right?
You know, like it's like I was like, I feel bad about giving somebody $35 for, you know, and that band had come from like Lynchburg, Virginia or something like that.
Oh yeah.
So they traveled. And I feel bad about that, but
yeah, it's tough being a road band like that because I mean, you basically make enough money to get to the next gig, and I admire that kind of tenacity because I'd give up about 3 shows in. I'd be like, this is bullshit, man. You know, I can go home and play my guitar at home. So the idea that there are so many bands who will do that, it is nice that you are trying to create a space where they're going to get the support that they need, and more so than normal.
Yeah. So how the Den works is, this will tie into that here in a second, but how the Den works is a band. I don't reach out to bands for playing shows. I don't need to. Clearly, I'm booked.
Right, yeah.
But I have seen a flaw in the way that I'm doing things, because right now it's like, hey, is this date free? Yes or no, and then the conversation goes from there. If it is free, hey, give me a lineup at least 2 months prior, and then get me a flyer at least 1 month prior. Because again, I'm not making really money off of this, and I still have my full-time job and whatnot, because again, I have a family.
Right,
that I can't just go cold turkey and just put forth everything on this whenever the data doesn't support that. However, when bands are coming up from Charlotte, all of their local bands that they know, all of their contacts are in Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't make the realization until we're like 15, 20 minutes after doors open, no one's here. I'm like, oh no, where's everybody from? And they're all they don't have a route here.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got to figure that out. Either compile a list of all the local artists that have played here, that know what's up. I'm not going to have it sorted in any way based on, draw or whatnot, because I feel like that's weird, and then my personal opinions come into effect of that.
Yeah, and you don't want to like give
right,
any kind of a
for
bias.
sure. Yeah. But have a list of something, and I'm still trying to figure that out because, you know, I had one band from Charlotte. This is what caused, and they were awesome. They were so good. I really enjoyed them, but the entire show was from Charlotte and Gastonia. And I don't talk to Carlos at the Monstercade about like when I'm booking a show, and he does the same thing with me. Like we talk all the time. He is actually a massive supporter of the Den and has given me a lot of like phenomenal advice over the years. But like, you know, I don't look at their schedule whenever I'm making my schedule, and vice versa. And same thing with Blind Tiger or not Blind Tiger, but Hanger. Like, we just book it. So sometimes there is a little bit of the same type of show going on and at the same time. It doesn't happen all that often, but it does split the audience. And whenever you don't have a local anchor, that audience split is a lot more skewed to not in the traveling band's favor. So I got to figure that out. But because I'm not making really money, I don't give a lot of headspace to it and time of like finding bands and finding a show because in my opinion it's kind of on them to build the show. However, I don't feel like I have done a good job of giving them the best tools to have a successful show. So I got to figure that out. Because that band I was telling you about, they were like, hey, so like how many people usually come? Like we're really trying to grow our audience. And I was like, dadgummit, there's not a local band on here, so I have no idea who's going to show up, guys.
Man,
like, and there ended up being like 15 or 16 people there on a 3-band bill. That's $50 a band,
right?
You know, it's so it helps in maybe covering their costs a little bit that way. But did they really grow their audience that much? Did they make a lot of merch sales because of that? Probably not. But it's a learning curve. Yeah. I've never done this before. I always wanted to open up a business. I never thought it'd be this business, and I also don't treat it as a business. So it's weird.
Well, that's kind of what I run into with this show. Is it's like I don't make any money from doing it. I just enjoy profiling people that I find fascinating. And I think if I were making money, I'd probably put more of a real energy into it. But at the same time, I'm like you. I'm like, well, you know, this is just kind of it's a side project, and I enjoy it, and I try to do it professionally, but trying to do it regularly has gone right out the window. You know, again,
sure.
Having kids and a family and full-time job, all
getting
that kind
sick.
of stuff. Getting sick.
But I think there's a lot of freedom in that.
Oh, for sure.
Because, you know, if you get sick, you're like, you know what? I don't have to do this. There's not like, it's not like you're going to lose out of X amount of money because you didn't do that.
Right.
So there's a lot of pressure that you can get freed of by doing that. You know, I got a stellar deal on the rent here, just phenomenal. But, you know, my wife's a tattoo artist, and she also does other stuff, and you know, makes jewelry and does designs for prints and things. And so she does a lot of the comic conventions and art conventions and whatnot. Oh, yeah. And that's really been what's paying for all of this, because again, my goal is when the Den is good to go, and I've talked to some people from the Milestone, and they're they gave me, I'm going to butcher a quote, so I'm not even going to try to quote them, but they basically gave me, Charlotte has X number of people in it, and for us to have just a packed show every time, we have to reach this number of people that are just diehard Milestone people, that they just love going to the Milestone because of what it is. Mm-hmm. And so now I think that I need to start doing that with the Den. Like, Winston has X number of people. If I have 650 people that know about the Den and that come to shows. Not every time. That's unreasonable to ask that every single show the same people come. That's not. But if there's 600 people, fine, I'll be great with 250 people. Let's start small. But if those people really care about the Den and and can get behind the idea of supporting the local artists and the next generation of artists, which has been overwhelmingly, I mean, I wouldn't still be doing this after 3 years if it wasn't overwhelmingly that's the case.
Yeah.
My capacity is like 90 people in the building. Mm-hmm. So if you're talking about take out the bands, take out me or my wife running the show, you're probably looking at 50 or 60 people can get in there.
Yeah.
And so if I have 250 people that have that mentality of it, and put aside the fact that there's maybe a traveling band that people really enjoy, or a local artist that's a heavy hitter or something like that, then it's going to be a sold out show every single time. And I think that's now that I'm not working for something, I'm not trying to like hunt down the fire marshal to do something. I'm not trying to hunt down like a plumber, because we had a massive issue for like months, from like November to literally 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I think did you post that on your social media? Because I feel like I heard about that. Maybe it wasn't on social media.
I didn't post it, but it has probably been posted.
Okay,
absolutely.
Okay.
Because I'll have bands like whenever it was the most bizarre thing. It was really weird. I mean, I had water coming out of the far wall when the toilet would drain the opposite direction. like 20 feet away from each other. And so we found out that the place apparently like 17 years ago used to be a laundromat. So there were pipes that actually, so when it got full, it just went to the pipes that it just kept going. And then it would come out of those pipes that was buried in the wall. But like, there's a wall there. It's a concrete floor. I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
But anyway, all of that stuff is done. But like, there are like, multiple shows all within I can't just not have a show, because again, I have 41 shows before June this year.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the figure is now after June and July and all the way to November, but like, I just shouldn't just like not have a show because of something. So I would like get a plumber in here and try to figure it out and troubleshoot while I'm working, and then do the show on the weekends. And it was flip a quarter. Like, we have no idea if it's going to overflow tonight or if it's not. And like, and I had multiple. It's like, hey man, like, because I have it set up to where, again, because I can't really afford to pay anybody right now. Like, I'm running the lights, the bar, the door, the snack bar, the lights, the door, snacks, sound, all by myself. And everything kind of came over from the house. I didn't really have to get any new equipment.
Right.
So that was great. But then all of a sudden the bathroom overflowed, and I have my mop bucket. I'm going out there, and the band's like, hey, can I mop this for you? Because like, you're doing like 7 things. I'm like, no, I got it. They're like, no, really. But then, because the way you're here, so you can actually see it. So the den is on one side of a building, and then the other side of the building is either an addition or whatnot, is my wife's art and tattoo studio called Fox and Heron. So the front door of the den and the back door of her shop share on the same patio. So whenever it was flooding, I would just say, hey, you can just go in that door right there across in the patio that's like 15 feet away, and it's the first door on the left is her restrooms. So we had... When it would overflow, we were like, all right, I'm not dealing with this right now. I'm going to mop up the mess, close the door. We're going to start using the other bathroom.
Right.
And, and that was the troubleshoot. But it's not a great look,
Yeah.
But every single time I had a show this whole year, there are new faces every single time. And I feel like that's real growth. Mm-hmm. It's not the same people. It's new faces every single time, and people that I don't necessarily have a connection to that are now habitual, like concert goers at the Den. I've learned their names. I've learned like what they like. I've stocked their favorite sodas because they, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like I mean, one guy reached out at one time, and just to see if the Den was all ages, because you know it's not very clear all the time.
Yeah, for a lot of clubs, it's like that.
I know.
Unclear.
Yeah. But because we doors at 7, show at 7:30 or 8, just depending on the bill. But we're typically over by 10:15.
Oh, okay.
Everybody's gone by 11.
Yeah.
But so whenever you're thinking about that time frame, you can't have all ages because people are out all late at night. You know, I didn't ever think that this could work if it didn't go past midnight at like a bar or something, or an actual club. But my wife and I were last March. We went to my hometown just to kind of get away for a weekend, and my childhood friend, she took us out to, I think, the only bar, honestly, in Morganton, North Carolina. But I left a long time ago, so that wasn't. There may be more, but I just didn't drink when I lived there. But the lights kind of came on while we were out, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, is it 1:30? Holy cow! Why are we out so late?" And she was like, "No, it's 11." I go, "I'm sorry, what?" And she was like, "Yeah." So the owner came out. I was like, "Yeah, my mom always said nothing good ever came after midnight. So I just, if I'm going to have a bar, I'm going to play it safe, and you know, and that's kind of what we did here. Like I got a great deal on my insurance because we're not open till 2 a.m.
Oh, no kidding.
Like,
I never thought about that, but having an effect. But
it's a massive effect because ABC, it's completely different because I'm not a bar. Like and all ages. Like we don't have liquor. Like it's all of this stuff that plays into protecting the next generation. Because like whenever we were younger. We would go to shows, and it's like, under 21 is $5 extra or something like that.
Yeah.
And I teetered with that because those people aren't going to do anything whenever we start serving alcohol. But, like, I feel like that's, like, penalizing the next... that's penalizing them for something they can't...
Old enough,
yeah, like, that's like... So instead of a $10 show now, that's $5 taken from a band that they could buy merch from. Like,
yeah.
And so, like, that's the mentality. And I talked it over with a bunch of different bands just to kind of like not troubleshoot, but brainstorm. Like, how can, and we kind of landed on stocking more sodas and getting like hot dogs and whatnot. Having the shirts there because I had the shirts for a while just on my big cartel, but nobody, I didn't really advertise it. But they were like, just put your shirts out. But I always kept thinking, like, well, I'm selling merch, and that might take away from someone buying the band's merch. And they're like, just put it out. No one cares, man. Like, and like, I overthink everything. I mean, I talked about Will making that GoFundMe video. I sat on that video for like 3 weeks before I posted it. And I was like, I just don't want somebody to think that, hey, I made this decision. Now come bail me out financially.
Right. Yeah.
And he was like, no one thinks that. There's not a single thing in that video that makes you think that of you. Like you're just asking for help, and you're starting a business. Like, and I was actually talking. So I work for a small business, and it's a print, like a paper print company. Like we do a lot of, like the mailers you get in your mailbox.
Yeah. So
sorry.
Yeah.
But or trifold. Right now we're doing a lot of graduation programs. That type of thing. And he was talking. It's like, yeah, I mean, his whole first year of doing business, he didn't make any money. I talked to Carlos at the Monster King. I think he said it was like, I mean, it took him, I think he said like 6 to 8 months to get his ABC license. Like,
really?
Yeah.
Good
like, I mean,
Lord.
it takes the cogs turn very slowly.
It drives me absolutely crazy.
Like, I mean, I had a fire marshal walk in October, and then he said I need to do this and this and this. super easy things, easy fixes. There was one that I had to put a panic bar. That's why you couldn't get in the back door earlier.
Oh, okay.
I had to put a escape bar, basically. So it wasn't like a lockable thing. It's like if you hit it, it's going to open for emergencies. Makes sense. I had to wrap my head around how to try to install that and everything. But then I had a fire marshal come back in the past couple weeks. And he was like, yeah, you didn't need to do that. Well, come on. Like, but he's like, but you do need a Knox box. One of those boxes that only the fire department can access on the outside of your building.
Right, yeah.
Well, that was $600.
Good Lord.
And the guy in October, the actual fire marshal, not the assistant fire marshal, he specifically said, I didn't need one of those. So it's like, again, it's the whole flip a coin. Like, what answers are you going to get? And that's really maddening. That's why it's taken so long for the den to kind of get rolling. And then, pack on the plumbing thing. And they're all new pipes. Like that used to be a concrete patio that has all the dirt and stuff. Because we found out that the old tenants from like 2021, they were an epoxy warehouse. They were pouring epoxy down the drain.
Oh,
yeah.
No.
So my landlord, he dug up the entire thing, got a backhoe in here, like had to replace all the piping from the city, from the street clean out to the commode, like brand new piping. And so now that but he took care of all of that, but I've got to pay for someone to come and grade and get the, and that's so low on the totem pole of being able to afford a patio when people are going to, they're going to stand inside, that is what it is. But it's just something after something that, there is not a single, I was not prepared for all of the different hoops, like if I was doing it at my house, I was just doing it at my house.
Yeah. And you don't have to ask anybody
for sure,
to really do anything about it.
But there's reasons why, that's not, preferable. Like, that's why cops come and shut down house shows. And they say the whole it's a noise ordinance thing, and I'm sure for most people it is. For me, it wasn't because I have so much land, and no one's around me. But like, there's a safety concern, and just like I said earlier, like there's a reason why, I can't have 90 people at my house.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, you start running into a situation that's kind of similar to the Black Lodge years ago. Were you familiar with the Black Lodge? It was there. I don't think they're around anymore, but it was kind of like it was, the best way I can describe it is maybe a moving club. It kind of went from place to place, and they had little house shows. Yeah. The only thing is that there was no real oversight, and so a lot of very questionable things were happening at these shows. And it goes back to what you're saying. It's like, yeah, there's a freedom to it, but at the same time, it can get whoever's in charge in serious trouble without some of this regulation going on.
And that's really what it's about. Is, and again, I had great, like no one came in. I mean, it was a detached garage, but I cleaned it up, and I put all the lights in and had the sound system, and it was better than most clubs, like. Small clubs.
Right.
But no, no one, even if there was a rowdy show that was contained in like the pit.
Yeah.
It wasn't people putting holes in my drywall, I've had great luck here so far because I'm still treating this like my house. Like it's my baby. Like, and there are certain people, that I have reached out, if they're like booking a band, I'm like, hey, I really don't want them here, because then in this location, and just like in my LLC and all of the paper, everything like that, it's still in such an infancy that like I want to get a lot of good history behind before something happens, and pray, hopefully nothing ever happens, like because no one wants that, but like if. And I was like, hey, and the booking band, I was like, they're like, oh, I didn't realize. I was like, it's okay. It's not really a known thing. I just, just didn't want. I just don't want those people here because I know those people. I see them downtown, like, and they're not necessarily bad people. They're just loud and ruckus, you know, like and if it's not them, it may be the people, the circles that they congregate in. And you know, if I have a heavy show here and they come in just drunk, which I've tried to like really understand, like, hey, who gets drunk at like 6 p.m? Mm-hmm. However, I'm trying to protect the all age thing. B, like, I don't have the money to fix everything right now, so that is, you know, and they're like, hey, I heard we got kicked off a show. What's the problem? And I was like, hey, it's not like that. For better or for worse, everybody knows who you are right now. And they're like, I was like, right now, I can't take the chance. And they're like, I totally get it. Like, right. And it's not a lot of I have a shit list of bands that have kind of like, you know, done some uncouth things while they're here and whatnot. But like my shit list, I tell them, and then it only lasts for like a year because people need to grow. Like, right. If you don't give feedback, and I'm not the, you know, the guru of managing artists or anything like that. But like when I played heavily, I wanted to be the nicest band. I wanted the venue to ask us back.
Right.
Yeah. You know, and like, that's why we got a lot of good opportunities. And some stuff just didn't fly really well. But like, again, they're kids. A lot of them are kids, and a lot of them are, you know, just turned 21 or 22. They're in college, and like they say things that they just don't also mean all the time, or they don't really understand the ramifications.
Right.
But like, I mean, I had one band, and they only paused like 3 times between songs. They you know, 20, 25 minute set. You don't have a lot of time to talk.
Right.
But the couple times they did pause, they're like, you know, shout out, this song goes out to all the merch girls in the building. Like, it was like, because you always make me want to take you home and fuck you. Like, and I was like, you don't really say stuff like that. Also, the only merch person that is there that night was another band's, a guy's wife. Like, that's, like, it was just really, like, it's like, hey, you should probably not say that type of stuff. Like
maybe run it through a filter that maybe hasn't fully developed yet.
Correct. And that's really what, like, I had a band, actually they're about to play again. They're in the next couple months. But like the last time they played was at the house. They played second. They have a 20-minute slot. They're like, all right, we got 2 more. And I was like, no, you don't. And I was like, they had been playing for 32 minutes. And I was like, nah, you're done. You got to stop. And they're like, and so I wrote like a big sign. It was like a piece of paper. I say a big sign. It was an 8.5 by 11 paper. But like, I was like, right, like, nah, you're done. And my wife was like, that's really harsh. You can't. So she wrote like a preface that I like put above. But then there's like too many words like for them to like look over and see. So and I was like, nah, you're done, guys. You're done. Like, you've played for 24 minutes. And I was like, this is your last song. Okay, we got one more song. And there was a 12-minute song. They legitimately played for like 43 minutes. They were the second band.
Oh, that's just rude.
But that's the thing, is like they're kids.
Yeah.
And they're like, we're gonna play our set. We have these songs. You know, understanding that, hey, this threw off the entire show. The entire show. Like, all of a sudden, you're talking about the last band is starting their set at best 30 minutes late.
Yeah.
Like, and again, I'm trying to have people gone by like 11. And
that usually means the other band is going to have to abbreviate the hell out of it.
And that's not fair, because typically the third band is the booker band, or the fourth band. You know, we try to sandwich for the most part, building the show. We sandwich the non-local people. But so because of that, I've started doing shows at 7:30 now. Like, I had this very, very on my clipboard on my phone. Like, just like, this is the load 6, door 7, show 8, band 1 8 to 8:20, band 2 8:35 to 8 to 9, like just exactly. But now it's changed to 7:30, or do 3-band bills. If you do a 3-band bill, that's a bigger split from the door,
right?
And you have longer set times. And we start at 8, because sometimes if you start at 7:30, no one's going to be there at 7:30.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even if like people want to be there, if it's a Friday night, people are still getting off work. They got to eat, like before they go out, and then and we're not downtown, so we don't get walk-in traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of understanding that aspect and just the reality of our location, which our location is really good. We're right off the highway. We have a whole parking lot now. That's not my front yard, which is great. Because the only person that ever got stuck in my yard was my boss. He came out twice, and both times he got stuck. The last time, the tow truck was like, "I can't do this. We're going to come back in the morning." Like, he got stuck.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. No, because my front yard is a hill.
Yeah.
So it's great. Like, we're there, and I have a street light, so that way it illuminates the whole parking lot. So that way it's all about mitigating risk, and the risk of that I've been mitigating is with the time slots is don't start too early, or if we start later, then don't have 4 bands, only have 3.
Mm-hmm,
so that way we can still get out, not necessarily on time, but in a reasonable time.
Yeah.
Because no show ever runs on time. If it starts at 8 and there's like people filing in, we're going to start the show at 8:10.
Yeah.
Like, that's just normal. Like, but if nobody's there, it really sucks. But I'm like, hey guys, you gotta go. I'm sorry, we can't start any later. And I have a built-in 15 minutes of changeover, but like my bass cab or my bass rigs stays here. So for the most part, people don't necessarily have to bring their bass rigs. That's one less thing to load in and off the stage.
Yeah.
And then for the most part, most shows will gear share the drum shells and just change out breakables. That's pretty standard.
Yeah.
Especially on the local level. People are consistently asking for backlining. Like, we don't backline. The stage isn't big enough to backline. Mm-hmm. And B, there's not a stage. It's floor ground. Like, I don't want anything that separates the audience from the artist. It also helps because when I have hip-hop shows, which I'm trying to do once a month, because Winston-Salem is so diverse. It really is. I am very happy with how diverse Winston-Salem is. And I always have been. I mean, I moved to Maine for about 14 months in 2016, and then 2017 I came back. I lived in Asheville when I went to college outside of Asheville.
Yeah.
And I taught after college, but those are very different place, but they're not super diverse. Like,
right, yeah.
Asheville may have a lot of different people that you're used to, but it's all of everybody there is really fits into like 3 categories of like demographics. Right. But here at Winston, we're so diverse, and our music scene is so diverse, and there's so much talent in Winston. There have been massive bands that have come out of the Triad, massive bands, and one of them. If you come to a Den show, you're going to see the next band at some point. Like, I just can't get over how much talent there is.
Yeah. I've actually been impressed with that too, especially in the last, say, 10 or so years. I've noticed there's been a real uptick in just the level of talent and the level of musicality in particular with a lot of groups is pretty astounding. It's amazing.
Is really funny because in the last 10 years, there's been less and less places to actually perform.
Yeah, you're right.
Because when I moved to Winston, there was Johnny and June's, there was Ziggy's, there was, of course, that was right when original Ziggy's was shutting down.
Yeah.
But then they came back downtown. There were multiple places down. There was the Garage.
I missed the Garage.
Tucker, yeah, Tucker comes into my work all the time to get stuff printed for his job now. Yeah. But so we've talked about that a lot. And all of these places just stopped. It stopped happening. But there's also, you had Green Street and NYP, and there was also Studio B in Greensboro, and it was like an art place. It was a really cool setup.
I remember hearing that. I never got out there.
It was a concrete room, so it echoed like crazy. Which that's a concrete. Ours is a concrete room too, but I just lucked up. I don't know really much about sound, but it just sounds really good in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's what's that whole thing like? If you like, things tend to flourish under like persecution. So not saying that it's been persecuted here, but like there's been a drought of places for people to perform, but for some reason that's elevated the level of musicianship, because they're like, hey, when I get the opportunity to perform, I need to knock it out of the park.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. And
there's see, I don't really know much about Charlotte and the Charlotte scene and venues there. And from what I can tell, not much has changed. Milestone's been there for God, how many years?
Yeah. As long as Charlotte's been there, it seems like.
But you have Skylark and Amos, and you have the Underground and small clubs too. But this area has definitely gone through droughts. And it's with BT Bam and like Taking Back Sunday and all of the band for the Almost at one point was from Winston. They wrote an album at Cranky's. Yeah. I mean, it's not Aaron Gillespie. But it's just kind of like, man, there's so much talent here, and now they're really getting cultivated. And I know there's a big push of I think MCR tweeted something a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was just a screen grab of an old tweet. It's like, hey, at one point 20 years ago, we were a local band. Go to local shows.
MCR?
My Chemical Romance.
I should have known that. My youngest is completely into that. Okay, but yeah.
But yeah, no, I think I saw that either that was a screen grab of an old tweet or a post or something like that. But that got shared however many thousands of times. But how many people that share that actually go to local shows?
Right.
I mean, we're not New York. There isn't a local show. There's not 10 local shows happening every single night. Mm-hmm. We're not, in Portland. We're not in or Seattle, or LA. We're small enough to where, hey, if it's a Friday, I guarantee you there's a local artist somewhere playing. And I bet the lineup is great. The artists are going to be there. Now, there might be 3 local shows going on that night, and you might go to one that is all these fresh kids had never played out. I mean, I had a show where kids didn't know how to tune their instruments.
That's weirdly awesome.
This one kid showed up to play bass with a 10-inch crate acoustic guitar amp. And I know that because I had one, for my acoustic guitar. But he showed up for that for his bass. It's like, hey, I'm going to let you use mine. And I wheeled it out at the house, and he was like, I don't know what to do with all this.
Brought him out the Ark of the Covenant,
not to toot my horn, but I had the same rig for 17 years. And then last year, I upgraded for the first time in 17 years. And I used the money that I got when I graduated high school, to buy my bass amp. And I used that for a long time. I got my money's worth. I really did.
Oh, yeah.
But everybody starts somewhere, but like this was his amp wasn't going to go. It wasn't like the toot my own horn. It was like we're not going to hear you because I don't mic. The only thing I mic is the vocals and the kick. Miking the kick pedal is something new. I didn't do that all the time, but the kick gets kind of lost, especially whenever we were just opening the door, playing out in the woods. And then any type of like tracks bands may have, like because obviously they need speakers for that, but like. And I was like, yeah, you just put your quarter inch in there, and this is your tuner pedal. He's like, how do I use that? Okay, man. But I was like, here, hand me your quarter inch. And his quarter inch was legitimately bent at like a 30-degree angle. I was like, we're going to use one of mine because you're not putting that in my amp. And then the guitarist was like, hey, can I use your tuner too? I'm like, sure. Where's yours? He's like, well, we normally just kind of like hit the same string and make sure that it sounds right together. I'm like, wow. But again, they were never out of that. And like, I had somebody kind of come up to me that night. That was actually the same night that the kids played for like 40 some minutes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But he kind of comes up to me. He's like, so I bet you're going to start vetting from now on. Like, they're like, because two of the bands were local and they were heavy hitters and they were amazing. But the other two were so green, it was painful. And it takes a certain level of balls to get up there and do that.
Yeah, it really does.
There's no one in their right mind that like gets out of practice and they're like, yeah, we're as good as My Chemical Romance at that level, you know?
Yeah.
They're like, and so everybody knows that they're not, so that's got to be playing in the back of their head on some level. I mean, there's anxiety, and that's why I'll talk about the whole, if they get a show that they're so gung-ho about because they really want to play with this one artist, they may not be ready for that. If they did that at a Poorhouse in Raleigh or Hangar or, like, no, the sound got to be, like, not taking the time at all. It's like, no, you're just playing your stuff. Get off the stage and be done. Let's get the show on the road.
Yeah.
So there is a bit of a level of, like, should I vet? I probably should. I probably should not have an entire bill of completely green artists.
Yeah.
However, they got to learn somehow. They got to learn that, hey,
we've all been there on some level.
I had a band last show, and last show was a clusterfuck. It was bad.
Really?
Yeah, it was bad. One band showed up, and they're like, yeah, it's just going to be us two tonight. Our bassist, while we were loading the car, our bassist said he couldn't make the show. And they were a three-piece. I was like, okay, well, at least it's the vocal, the guitar / guitar, and the drummer. Like, they can make it work.
Yeah.
And this band they're great. They've played at the house multiple times. They played here a couple times. And they've just been really supportive. And at the end of the night, they're sitting there, like, wiping down the merch tables and trying to fold up the table. I'm like, you really don't have to do that. Like, they're just nice kids. Like, and then the last band gets there, and he's setting up the drum set for the entire show. And then we're waiting, and then the bassist, who I've been talking to like all day because they responded to a story about the show. We were talking about it because I couldn't tag the band for whatever reason. But I think it was because I didn't follow them. So I couldn't tag them.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize I didn't follow them because it was like legitimately like I would put in the tag and they're like, this user does not accept tags. So it was super weird. So I couldn't tag them in anything. But I had been talking to them about it, and so the bassist gets there with a friend, and so apparently our vocalist and guitarist he had a medical emergency. He can't make the show. I was like, oh no. So what are y'all going to do? And well, I haven't heard from the drummer today either. I'm like,
oh no.
I've been talking to you guys for hours. If you would have told me this, like in the group chat with all the bands or something, like we probably should have canceled the show.
Yeah.
One band had all of their members there of 3.
Oh man.
And so they're like, yeah, we're just, and so the drummer showed up at 7:55 when the doors opened at 8. Or no, not the doors, but the show started at 8.
Yeah.
The drummer showed up at 7:55 and was like, I was like, hey, I'm just loading my stuff. I'm setting up. I was like, well, y'all going second. Oh, that's cool. We didn't know we were going second. I was like, yeah, well, and his mom was there with her two friends. And she's like, yeah, he said load-in was at 7:55. I was like, well, it was at 6. And she like gave him the dirtiest look, being like, see, I told you it wasn't at 7:55. It was, and he was like, how was I supposed to know? I was like, well, it was in the group chat with all the bands.
Right.
Like also, if you don't know, ask.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's
it's funny how information comes from
crazy.
those questions.
Yeah,
you know?
My gosh, it's nuts. But yeah, it was, but then they just kind of jammed it out during their set, and it was, you could tell that they were struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I cannot jam. As an bassist, as a musician, like, I need some sort of structure. That's just not, and I also don't really understand jam bands. Like, I did jazz, like I can play jazz, but like there's structure, like when to take a break, when to not take a break, when to elaborate on something, when it's this person's part to elaborate. There's a structure that has like loose musicality going through it, but like you have to like know how to jam to do that, to pull it off. And it was like the bass was just kind of like just playing something, and the drummer would kind of like play something. I was like, for 30 minutes, and it was rough. And the singer texted me, he's like, "Hey, I heard it was rough. I was super sorry." I was like, I mean, they did the best they could. They really could, and they didn't want to cancel, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But sometimes canceling is the best option.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and that's a hard lesson. Like, I was sick 2 Sundays ago.
Mm-hmm.
Just I was achy all over. I just could not. I had low energy, and I had 4 shows that week. I had one on Wednesday, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So not 4 shows that week, but yeah. Calendar week. Anyway, but I texted the group chat that morning. I was like, guys, just to let you know, I'm not feeling well. I'm super achy. I was like, I don't know if I can run the show tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never had to do that. Like, but I texted Carlos Monstercade, and I was like, hey, do you have a show tonight? He's like, no, actually. Let me check with the staff. And I was like, hey, the Monstercade can take the show. Is that okay with you guys? Because Carlos was like, hey man, like I'll come to the den and just run the show.
Right, yeah.
Like, that's the level of support that
this
man has given the den. Like, it's just really cool. And I was like, no, don't worry about that. Like, if you could just take the show, that'd be great. Because then and I think he said there was 38 people there. And he split it with the bands and everything. And you know, if you're at a bar, so you're getting bar payout, and I'm sure that helped on a Sunday night at the Monstercade.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you know, like, and but like I felt so bad. But man, Monday morning I felt so much better. Mm-hmm. Because there was a level of anxiety about doing the show while you're sick too. That's also not making you feel great.
Yeah.
And
playing all the terrible scenarios in your
sure.
head,
yeah, like
psyching yourself
like
out.
I mean, and I'm doing that right now. I somehow double booked on June 14th, and that happens. It's never happened to me, but it's happened. It happened to Carlos in the Monstercade like last year, and he was like, do I have the show? I said, double booked. I don't know how it happened. I was like, yeah, I'm free. Come on. Or it also happened at Anchor. Anchor Coffee. They had a show, and accidentally someone booked one show and a different person booked another show. They didn't communicate. They're on staff there, and a band reached out to me and said, hey, Anchor just let us know. And it was a weekday show. I was like, y'all, I'm free. Come on. And it was like a week prior.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of camaraderie between places that are doing similar things. You know, Anchor Coffee is a coffee shop, obviously. Like they do. My bread and butter is actual shows. You know.
Yeah.
And but the Monstercade is a bar, but they don't take all the money from the artist. They give the money to the artist, like, because they're making bar money.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
So there is a little bit of a different thing with each place, but we all realize that we're in this together for the betterment of the Winston-Salem music scene.
Right.
Like, and that's really special. Like, when we used to play, it was always like, hey, you know, I really like this band, this other local band, but if they're good, then that means that we might not get the spot. You know, there was like this level of competition, and that, I feel like that has gone out the window now. Like, seeing bands here, there's also been less and less and less battle of the bands. Like,
yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about that.
I have, the last time I did a battle of bands was at Ramcat in 2015. But like, I haven't even heard of something like that. We have like fests of like 6 or 7 bands because it's more than a concert, but like, or a show. But there's not any, like, I think the pay to play, the pitting local artists against each other versus like collectively making the whole musicianship of the area just elevated. It's kind of gone out the window. Like, they're doing, we are, as from venues and artists, we're doing better at this camaraderie, and like, hey, just because someone has something does not mean that you can't have it.
Right.
It's not this like percentile thing where if someone has 20 or if someone has 80, you only have 20. That doesn't make any sense. Like, and once we kind of took us a while to get there, but I think that's kind of where we're at. It's been really, really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, in you mentioning that, it makes me feel like there's also been sort of a shift in audience perception as well, where I feel like more people, for local bands and, you know, the bands that are less than a superstar, I feel like the audience wants to support and wants to actually give money to pay for a ticket and to buy merch and to support it. And I feel like you were saying before, back during the Battle of the Bands, and then you've got other bands who are competing against each other, it felt more like, it didn't feel like you were supporting them. It felt like you were choosing a side and digging your feet in almost.
Right. Yeah. I think also, like, there's a level of humility now. A level, not complete humility. There's a level of it that understands that it's really hard, because it's, even if you're amazing, does not mean you're going to be a huge band anymore. Like, that's not like you're fighting an algorithm now. You can't but you can't battle against other local artists that may create like a great show with a good payout. Like, you know, it's just a great time. Like, whenever you have to fight an algorithm just to have your post seen.
Right.
Like, you know, like, you have to pay Meta just so I think I have, let's see, which it actually blows my mind how many followers I actually have on Instagram. Yeah, I'm about to hit the 2,000 mark. So 1,938.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And like I said, every time there's a show, there's new faces. Every time there's a different band, their audience comes in. But like, I bet if I don't pay that $5 to Meta, 50 people are going to see a post.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
like, and that's nuts. Like, if I, you know, and the bands are doing the same thing. Like, if they don't pay the money out, they're not going to be seen. So there's also a level of there's a humility check for me too. The same show in October that had like 90 people in at my house in 2022.
Yeah.
None of the bands had social media presence.
Really?
Yes. I was like, oh, Lord, these people are about to get, you know, humbled, because I think the most social media was like 174 followers or something. And I realize that's a really toxic way of looking at it. But there's 90 people that came out because they were in the house show circuit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and all of these kids brought all of their friends out, and I was like, this is so busy.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I was not expecting this. So that gave me a reality check. Like, okay, I shouldn't pay attention to their engagement and to their, like, all that stuff. Now, I do pay attention to whether people are sharing the posts.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we had an artist that's on my shit list now, probably indefinitely. But because we had a group chat, hadn't heard anything, when it loaded in all that stuff, and I was like, hey, don't know if you've been able to see the load in was at 6. I understand it's past that, but we were just wondering whenever you get there. Here we kind of got everything set up.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, is there going to be a crowd? That was her response. She hadn't posted the show a single time in the 2 weeks that she got added onto it. Because that show went through a lot of turbulence too, with bands like not having like backing out and whatnot. So it changed up like 3 times, and the last time it was 2 weeks prior to the show. And one of the bands backed out was apparently bringing their gear sharing their drum set for the whole show. And
shit.
Yeah. And one of the bands got there at 7 at doors, because I had nobody there at 6 till 7:30. Artist wise, I had people at the door, which I was like, hey, listen, I haven't heard from any of the artists. I'm not charging you for the door yet. Like, and the guy that booked it was like, have you heard from any of the bands? Like, I have not. Have you not? Like, and it was like, come on, like, but her response, is there going to be anybody there? I was like, well, have you told anybody about the show?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Like, I mean, and she showed up and did her amazing vocalist. Holy cow, amazing. However, like, she's like, yeah, I just don't think people really know about this place. So therefore, I was like, no, there's a lot of people that know about the Den.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just don't think that you said anything and you told your friends or anything. Like, you didn't have anybody come out. Like, and that's saying something. And it was a whole thing. But like the way that she acted during the whole, like, I mean, she was like, oh, what's up, Winston? Ha 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 ha. And then like kind of like said it ironically. I was like, okay, well, I'll let that. It could have been a joke. It just didn't land with me. It's fine. But then like between the 4, she kept saying like, I mean, all 4 of you. Like, unless I have merch over there. I mean, if the 4 of you want it. I mean, she kept bringing it up, and I was like,
oh, that's kind of shitty.
It's really shitty. I was like, I mean, you didn't do anything for the show. Like, and that sucks for the person that, I mean, the band that booked it was from Asheville, and this whole thing just kept falling apart, and they were trying to make it work. And then the day up, they finally got a solid lineup 2 weeks prior. They were pushing the show. Again, they were from Asheville, so their market is in Asheville.
Yeah.
So, their posts are it's probably not being seen by Winston-Salem people or Greensboro people. Like, I mean, if their majority of every demographic is in Asheville and they're trying to break out of that, them sharing the post doesn't really help anything.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other 2 locals didn't say anything. One band didn't even have social media, and the other band didn't say anything about it. So, yeah, of course no one's going to come. Especially, it was also it wasn't punk. It wasn't like a normal...
Like a typical Den show.
Correct. So the artists that I was tagging, if my community that follows me checks them out, they're like, oh, that's not really my style of music. Completely fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely. However, I'm not reaching other people either.
Yeah.
It's we had a jazz fusion night in February or March on a Thursday. There was like 50 people here. Yeah,
damn, for a Thursday.
It was
wow.
awesome. It was it was 44 people, but like, it blew my mind that A, it was Thursday, B, it was a completely different genre than I've ever had here, and it was a stellar night. It was really cool. Yeah. The music was great. Violin, horn section. One guy had a trombone. It was great. But those people put in the work. Those people did, and I didn't even realize it was all female. It was the three female led bands too, but they were all locals, and they all did their push.
Yeah,
and I didn't recognize anybody there. So it's all new faces. So that's how you branch out into different genres. Now,
and mentioning jazz, I think it's interesting that you say that was a really big night, because I've been hearing rumblings in the last 6 months or so about people wanting like a jazz venue or a place where they can see jazz on a regular basis. That would be a very interesting thing to bring up over here.
I mean, it was a jazz fusion night, so
right.
It definitely wasn't just like your straight up big band jazz. But I mean, having that on a weekday, again, weekday shows work. I didn't do weekday shows at the house because it throws off my kids' schedules. I mean, the 10 and 12-year-old at the time, they go to bed at 9 because I wake up at 6 in the morning and take them to school. So it throws off their routine, and I don't want people late because they want to be at the show, especially if it was at the house. If they wanted to run around, they could just run around the backyard. They don't really come here all that often because they'll just disappear into my wife's shop over here, or I have found them at the church on the steps before. I'm like, can't go over there. You're like, it's a church. I was like, I understand that. That's kind of the point. However, you look like stoop kids. They're just hanging around after dark on a church's front step. You can't do that. You know,
looks like you were very much up to no good.
Absolutely, and they don't really get that. I mean, I brought this up at another podcast that I did a couple months ago, but my 10-year-old one time, he greeted all of the bands in his Ghostface costume at the house. He was behind the trees, just popping out, and I was like, "You got to not do that, man." And he didn't understand why, because he was 8 or 9 at the time, but he didn't understand why, and I kind of broke it down that we're pretty much in the setting of every 80s slasher film, like Crystal Lake and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then you have a known serial killer, and he's never seen the Scream movies either.
Right.
It just looks cool for him. And once I kind of broke it down, I could start seeing him just grin bigger and bigger. I was like, "Do you get it now?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll go change." and the band just thought it was funny, but they don't really come out because, again, they're still in the runaround phase instead of paying attention to the artists.
Yeah,
they think it's cool because I know the artist, that I'm providing a space, and it's not them paying attention to the music.
Right. It's more of a vibe for them.
Correct. Yeah. It's all over the place. They're wild. But yeah, now that we're in the new space, it's turnkey. I get off of work, I can come here, open the door, and the bands can be loading in. Yeah. So I don't have to it's not I don't have to take everything down and put it back up whenever my band has practices or whatnot. It's just open the door, let's go.
Right.
So weekday shows are not only plausible but easy now.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, because it's not screwing up your schedule and ruining.
Yeah.
You're not going to have some strange guy coming up to your door going, "All right, I'm ready for the show." You know?
Exactly. So that'd be great. I feel it's weird because, maybe it worked out because the Den feels like a speakeasy. I don't know. But there's not a lot of places like Bulls. Bulls isn't there anymore.
Right.
So there's not live bar jazz ability. I don't think Wrong Number does. Wrong Number is where Bulls was. But I don't think that they do music. I know they have a DJ sometimes. Mm-hmm. But I've actually haven't been in Wrong Number since since they opened. But I know AVL.
Oh yeah, it's either AVL or I think it is AVL.
I think it's AVL,
I haven't been out there yet, but I know they have some shows I wanted to go to.
I was talking to someone that came in and to the shop this past week, actually, because she was asking me how things were going at the Den. She's like a manager at one of the Lockerettas, and she was like, "Yeah, her friends own AVL," and I was like, "Oh, okay." She's like, "Yeah, it's nuts. It took them like a year to get their ABC license."
Holy shit!
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And she's like, "Yeah, apparently like they got the go ahead, and then they got everything going, and then the city was like, nah, you can't do it." And they're like, "But you inspected." Like I'm sure there was way more. This is like a 5-minute conversation,
right?
You know, and hearsay kind of almost. But like they do shows too, but they have to have their shows over by 10, which is very similar to us because they're a nightclub.
Yeah.
You know? But again, being a nightclub, it doesn't matter if you start earlier or later, you still can't have underage kids there.
Yeah.
So that's just another place where you can't have, Monstercade can't have people under 18.
Yeah.
And so there's not a lot of places that can do it. Anchor could do it. That would be actually a pretty sweet place to have, like jazz. Mm-hmm. Have you ever been in Anchor Coffee?
I've been by there, but I haven't been in there yet.
It echoes like a motherfucker. However, I mean, you just think like it's in the old tobacco, like that with the stacks and everything like that. Really cool place. Greg, the owner, is amazing, and he's a music lover himself. Like, but it's really, really, really cool place. So that might be something that maybe the Den finds its niche in being a punk jazz venue. Right. But yeah, I mean, I had a artist. We had a hardcore show, like traditional hardcore, a couple months ago, and one of the bands was like, "Hey, so what's the payout?" And one of the guitarists was like, "Oh, Tony gives us everything," and he was like, "What? No." And he's like, are you Tony?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You're out of your damn mind." He's like, "You need to be doing 70-30 split minimum." I was like, "Well, that's just not what I'm going to do, man. Sorry." Like, and he wasn't aggressive about it. Obviously, he was being, a
little ball busty.
He kind of came up and was like, "Man, I love this." He's like, "I want to book shows here. There are so many bands." And that was like End of Your Rope and Chained, and like heavy hitters. Like, there were 68 people at that show.
Wow.
And again, crowd was being ruckus, and they were being rowdy and stuff like that. But everybody was respectful. They weren't just like putting holes and stuff like that. Like, and that's the thing. It's like I'm okay with kids being kids. Like, I actually had my first crowd surf for that show, and someone put their foot like really high. So I painted the Den. The very first show, everybody stands up next to the wall, and they just do the whole like peacock thing where one foot goes against the wall. That's just how it always is.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah.
There's feet everywhere, about like 2.5 feet up from the floor, just lining their footprints everywhere, the entire thing. After the first time, I was like, "Oh man, that was not smart. I did it matte. I didn't do a satin." But there's this one footprint that's like 6 feet up off the ground, and I was like, you know what? It actually might be really funny to like put a frame or like have someone use the gold Sharpie to like sign their name. It's like now it's like, hey, how high can I get? Like when my crowd surfing, like
a bizarre limbo.
Yeah, pretty much the opposite way.
Yeah.
But the guy he kind of came up and was like, "Man, I love this. I want to do more here. Like, what's your schedule like? Let's connect." He's like, "However, I'm not going to book unless you take something. Like, even if it's like, if I book 4 bands, like, we're doing a 5-way split of the door." Mm-hmm. Like, he's like, and you have to promise me. He's like, "I legitimately will not book here unless you take some money, because I'm bringing all of these kids that are straight edge, and they're not going to do anything for you." Mm-hmm. Like, so I started stocking Liquid Death, the water, because it's really big in the. One of my friends is really big in the straight edge hardcore community. He's like, "Just stock Liquid Death and you'll be good."
Like, oh, that's funny.
But again, like, he's right. Like, I had 3 shows last week. I think I made $60.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know? Like, and that's, on some level, I have to be okay with that. Like, there's not going to be every weekend isn't going to be a knockout of the park.
Mm-hmm.
But it's better for me to accept that than, like, keep going back and forth on, like, oh, the door split is this is, oh, I didn't make, like, I think Gas Hill does, like, they take the first 200 and then they do a 70-30 after that.
Oh, okay. And Gas Hill's the upper section of Ramcat. Yeah.
And I actually learned about that yesterday because I was trying to find a place for my double book on June 14th. Because I had them down on the 13th. Because 13 was like in the back, as in the bottom of their name. And so I just looked at the wrong date.
Oh, yeah. And then your brain disconnects.
I said it was good to go. But I looked at the wrong date. And I had them in the calendar at the wrong date. And then when they posted the flyer, the band that was actually for the 14th was like, hey, are we good? Like, I was like, oh, no. Like, problems ensued. And and so, but I've been reaching out to 4 venues. I'm trying to find a place for them to play. Like, I'm not just, I'm owning the mistake. I told them, I was like, hey, listen, I had that on the wrong day. That is completely my fault. I have reached out to people. I'm trying to hear back. So that way you don't lose the show.
Yeah.
And we have a month. So I feel like we caught it early enough, but I reached out to someone that books with ALV or AVL. Again, I need to figure out which one that is. If you're listening to the podcast, I'm sorry for butchering your name. And I've reached out to Monstercade and they're booked, and so I'm trying. Like, because again, I feel bad. I do feel bad. I felt bad about moving the show from here to the Monstercade. Mm-hmm. However, because again, Monstercade's not all ages. So if there were kids that wanted to come, then they couldn't go anymore.
Yeah,
they still had 38 people, which is great. It's $380 split 4 ways. You know.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
But it's yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of a roadblock that you have to kind of bump over and see what you can do to, an opportunity to improve, you know, on some level.
I do all of my booking on Instagram. Somehow there's a website flowing around called The Den Shows.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not yours.
It was there. Okay, I got the domain, and I never published it. But since then, I stopped the domain and everything because I had the email address, but Google wouldn't let me access the Tony at the Den Show's email on my phone. So
I've run into something like that.
This is, I would literally have to go into Chrome on my phone and just go access it. But even then, it wouldn't work all the time, and it consistently logged me out after like every session, and then I was have to do a verification every time I logged in the email, so I wouldn't get any notifications when I got an email, and it was a lot of hassle. So I was like, yeah, I'll just put everything on my personal email.
Yeah,
and but I don't know why that website is still like I've canceled the domain, I've stopped paying for the hosting, and it's still up. Like I literally, last night I had somebody reach out. I was like, "Hey, I was trying to email you at this email on the website, but it doesn't seem like it's working." And I'm like, "How is that still up?" Like, because I had to get a website for my insurance because they had to verify something.
Yeah. But it's just floating around in the ether.
Yep.
Just doing its thing. And
I guess, but it hasn't been updated in. Last year. Yeah. It's months and months and months. So it's super weird. But then on my Instagram, my link in my bio, you can click it, and it doesn't give you my my personal email, but it'll open up a tab for you to shoot an email.
Yeah.
But on Facebook, my auto. Because I don't have Facebook on my phone, I don't have a personal Instagram. It's just the business stuff. Because I'm already busy enough with family, doing this, doing the jobs, and like I don't need to have all of my personal social medias and all of that stuff on there. But like my if somebody messaged me on Facebook, it automatically replies to, hey, thank you for your message. If you can just shoot me a message on Instagram, I get that. I'm way faster at that.
Yeah,
responding. And then they'll do that because hopefully they'll read that message.
Yeah.
But like having all your booking and bands and chats and everything at one place.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone's asking a question, I can search one place to find the answer instead of like going into Facebook, going into this email, going into that email. Like it's just
yeah, it's funny how that stuff will just start to multiply and spiral out of control, and you just lose
really
track
fast.
of everything.
Yeah, it was crazy that people searched the Den Show, the website in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, they went to the Instagram. That was like DM for booking or whatever, but they went to the website instead and followed the instructions that were on the website.
Yeah.
Again, that I did not know was a published website. Like it's so. It's I think at some point that will just go away and everything. So,
in the meantime, it's just kind of like a fun little free tool that you've got out there to at least if somebody finds it, they
it's
go,
super out of date though. It doesn't even have this address on it.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Oh no!
Yeah. No,
that
it's
sucks.
very, very out of date. Yeah.
Wow.
It was. I mean, that was when I was getting quotes for insurance. That's why I had to build it, and then I would send individual private links for people to view it. That's why I didn't think it was published, because I would literally send a private viewing link to these insurance companies to try to find the best insurance on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very out of date.
I mean, it's one of those things. I guess you'll just have it around as a fun little relic.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about some of the upcoming shows, some of the other ones you got going on.
So I have one Friday and Saturday.
Yeah.
Let's see. Friday is Bedroom Division, The Good Madness, and then Kenny Wavinson. I actually don't know Kenny Wavinson. I'm assuming that's a solo artist. With The Good Madness, a lot of those guys work with Dose in Winston-Salem and the Arts Council and stuff like that. Good crew. Everything.
Are they the ones that run third Friday? It's like every third Friday they have something downtown. It's kind of like around Trade and 6th Street, I believe.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
One of my buddies, they run the lab for the Arts Council, which is the first Monday of every month.
I know about that. Okay.
And members of the Good Madness help out with that too. But really, the pet project is Dose, and they have it's on Liberty, I believe, though.
Yeah.
They have that spot, and again, same idea. It's very, very small, but artists can just kind of come in there and just kind of use the space.
Yeah.
And then I have one. So on the 11th on Saturday is it actually has been it got really it was turbulent as well. There were some issues with bands and backing out and stuff. So it's now 3 bands. And again, I don't think that any of these are local, but they just didn't want to cancel the show. So I don't know how, but it's Komodo and Skewer Rat and Harriet Rip. So, or it might be Harriet R.I.P.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think it's a very punk.
Okay.
But one of the last shows I did, that was a punk show. On the flyer, they just centered the Instagram square on a rectangular flyer, and at the top they put punk, at the bottom they put show. Because even if you don't know, and that's what we were talking about. He's like, even if people don't know the bands, and they were like, hey, I want to go to a punk show.
Yeah,
that's
because
not
they
a
have
bad
their
idea.
Own personality,
Yeah,
they really do.
Maybe that's the way. Like, hey, if all three of these bands are not local. They don't have any local support, but people just want to go to a punk show. And there you go. That's how you get people in. So, we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
But let's say so I'm very, very booked, which is really cool.
There's this one, was it Shiri Kodama? But I see their style is North Carolina dummy grind.
Oh, yeah.
What in the hell is that?
Yeah, that's the heavy, that's going to be like post-hardcore.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard of dummy grind.
I haven't either. No,
there's new.
Yeah, there's going to be subgenres like crazy now. But yeah, jiu-jitsu, demiurge local.
Okay.
Shiri Kodama, and then neuron activation. Neuron activation, they're not heavy, but it's like a mixed genre store.
Yeah.
And mixed genre shows can be really successful because typically not everybody listens to the exact same genre. Some people only listen to one band. That's fine. Dave Matthews Band is their their personality. And those people that do that is who they are, or Coldplay or something like that. Other people, they just, you put the kids actually found my old iPod, which was really funny for them to try to work. But we put that on shuffle, and it's all over the place.
Yeah.
But it also hasn't been updated in a decade.
I guess years at this point.
But there's a lot of local bands that aren't a thing anymore that I listen to all the time on my iPod because they're not on streaming platforms because they stopped doing. If a band stopped being a band in 2011, they're not on Spotify. Mm-hmm. They're not on anything like that. Unless they just wanted the kick in the teeth and just paid for it to get back on. 5 years after, because that's really when it got popular. Like Spotify wasn't, and Pandora wasn't super popular until 2013, 14.
Yeah.
So, and that's whenever the whole market shifted to less physical media to more, iTunes to streaming platforms. And hey, if you stream 100,000 songs, then you get 50 cents. But it's
so ridiculous.
Again, it's an algorithm though.
Yeah.
They're fighting even they're not even fighting the social media algorithm. They're just fighting the streaming algorithm. Because if you don't have anything posted, that's why singles have become very, instead of albums or EPs.
Yeah,
you drop a single every month just to stay current and in that algorithm versus dropping an EP every 2 years or something like that. And it's the game has changed, and I'm not going to argue for the better or for worse. Hey, Spotify's a killer deal.
Yeah.
But does it kill artists?
Yeah.
But, that doesn't mean that anybody can put something on Spotify.
Yeah. And from a listener's point of view, for me, the idea that I can have a thought in my head where I go, you know what, I want to listen to all of Judas Priest's catalog.
Yeah.
I can go do that this afternoon. I love that about it.
And they've implemented the shop and the tour system, so you can add your shows to Spotify. You can add your own merch shop, and I think that's been really helpful. Instead of having everything all in one place. They're still a business. Obviously, they're going to take their cut. But then physical media has absolutely had a comeback. 30 is Dead just had their EP release show here, and they're on cassettes. Mm-hmm. My middle kid, when Porch Coffin came through last year, she got one of their cassettes. No idea how it worked, and the cassette got ruined because it's like going. She's ripping it out. Yeah, exactly. That tape, but it's tangible. It's there. It's yours. We were cleaning out the basement the other day or a couple weeks ago, and I have 2 gigantic totes of CDs still. I have probably 300 or 400 CDs.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God, my oldest, they asked for a CD player for Solstice this year. So my parents got them a CD player, and everything, and so they have all the CDs lined up underneath it, and they can, and it's been really cool.
Yeah.
And I think I kind of got them onto that because the compression in Spotify when you're listening on your phone, is like, because they're really big into Day to Remember right now, and we played with them right before their Common Courtesy album came out, and Common Courtesy is actually my favorite album from Day to Remember. So they were really listening to this album just on repeat, right?
Yeah.
And so we went driving one day, and my phone wouldn't connect to my wife's car because I hadn't paired my phone to her car. So I just had the CD, and we listened to it because we try to, when life isn't crazy busy, we try to go on a drive once a week. And so, but it actually reminded me how much clearer and much more I could hear. And it's always weird because, you know, you have those audio files of like people like, well, you know, records are the way that you should listen to an album. Vinyl is the pristine, like, you know, that's just what it is. That's the hipster culture and whatnot. And I'm not knocking it because I never got a vinyl until I met my now wife and kids. And once I found out the Devil Wears Prada made a deluxe vinyl with like a studio book in it, and I was like, I need to have it. But it's been really cool to see them change over to CDs and just putting a CD in and like looking at the book, looking at the lyrics, doing all the things that I loved to do when I was 16.
Those old rituals.
And it's like, because with Spotify, you just put it on and you just shuffle. Now you're listening to a CD, and if it's a theme CD, you're listening to it in the order that it was intended for.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not the that's not the purpose every single time you listen to music. Sometimes you just want music on, you know.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like even when my wife has the music here playing, we don't have CD. We don't have a 10-disc CD changer in here. Like that's kind of, it would be silly to do that. However, it is really cool to see that next generation like get excited about. Oh my gosh, like I love this band. Like I was like, well, that CD is from the same band that you love, but when you were like 2.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I was like, you might not listen to that CD and think that band. Which I think goes to show a lot of how artists can change and grow. I mean, if you look at the Devil Wears Prada, their new stuff is not anything like their old stuff. But we went to go see them and Era and Silverstein and Beartooth last year, and first of all, killer show. Any one of them could have opened. Any one of them could have headlined. But they didn't even play with a click. They had no samples. They had nothing. They just did it raw. It was like 30. It was like a 35-minute set, which is a super short set for a band of that caliber.
Yeah.
But then they're like, well, we're going to play this song. None of you will know it. It's the first song we ever wrote, and it was pre-Plagues, like on their EP before they got signed, like, and it was just raw and so it's phenomenal to see that a band that can put out a song like Cancer or Salt that is just like the heaviest lyrics, subject matter ever, and wishing that somebody had cancer instead of like finding out that they committed suicide. Like that is a heavy subject matter to talk about. And then how like you feel like you're a shitty person because you just hope for that because you can't take another one of your friends, like saying they're going to commit suicide. Like that's nuts. And then you just start screaming about goats on a boat. And you can do that in the same set, which is really, really impressive. It's very impressive.
It's something you want to aspire to in terms of how you want to be able to structure effectively. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's also just showing like, hey, like I'm not alienating my fans from back then. I'm not alienating new fans now. the band is not just the band now or then, it is as a whole.
Yeah.
I mean, even A Day to Remember said, like, you love me for my past, you hate me for my present. Like, because so many people were so pissed off at the direction that they took. Mm-hmm. Like, Linkin Park is a great example. They just came out and made whatever music they wanted to make. They're all phenomenal musicians. Like, and I love that. Like, one of my favorite bands. Not because I like every single one of their songs. They have an album that I absolutely despise. I will skip any song from that album 9 times out of 10. Like, but that doesn't change the fact that they still made an album that they wanted to make.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so connecting, going back, all those bands started somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and I mean, it kind of speaks to the sort of do-it-yourself nature of what you're trying to do with the Den,
right.
So
yeah.
Well, man, tell everybody where they can. They don't want to go to the Den Show website.
Follow me on Instagram, the Den Shows on Instagram. I do have a Facebook. I am not active on it. Everything I basically post on Instagram just naturally just gets posted over there. Mm-hmm. But we're in Winston. It's a great 3756 Ogburn Avenue. But all
right off the highway, easy to get to.
Yeah, like it's right off the highway, less than a mile off of 52. Easy to get to. We got a lot of shows. I mean, if it's a Friday or Saturday, guaranteed there's going to be a show here. Like, and that's
right.
But I post all the flyers on Instagram, and there's that whole mentality of come see your next favorite band, like that type of thing. Like, and there's a lot of good musicians.
Yeah, and there's a lot of truth to that. You go to enough shows, you'll see a band that eventually you'll be like, oh, damn, I saw them back when they were in their infancy.
I mean, yeah, the milestone is really big about, like, hey, like, Nirvana played here. And, like, yes, but Nirvana wasn't Nirvana when they played at the milestone.
Yeah, like, they were just a little grunge band.
Correct. Like, yeah, so that's the thing is there's going to be, and even if they don't, succeed is not the right word. But even if they don't become this national act, but there's so much good music. Like, I listen to so much local music. I mean, I'm back here behind the counter, just like having a good time, just singing along to these artists that have come to the Den a couple times. And I literally, their songs are so catchy. I know the chorus by the second time they've played it, or the second. I know their set or their songs the second time around because I was like, man, I really want to listen to these guys. And I go to Spotify and listen to them. And it's been really, really, it's been a blessing for me and my family to see this kind of get supported. Mm-hmm. And then also, hopefully I'm passing that on to the artists to provide them a low stakes place to play.
Yeah.
If you go, everybody that starts touring is going to play in front of an empty room. And that's the sucky part about being a baby man, being a baby touring band. But hopefully with the community, that's not going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's got to pay a couple of dues, in order to get better. But to have support, that's what really will make the difference in the long run. Because I think, you'll naturally improve the more you play, but having a system that will encourage that, and that's good. So it's like, man, I'm glad you guys are filling that void to provide this, and especially around Winston. It's been a long time coming for stuff like that. It especially with this sort of drought, like you said, where we kind of hit a lull where there wasn't as many places where you could enjoy this kind of music, and now it's kind of coming back. And so I think it's just great to have a do-it-yourself vibe because it's so needed.
Yeah, it's well, I do like doing things myself, and that may be just because it's hard for me to give up control.
I'm the same way, yeah.
When I was playing in my bands regularly, like I had to load the music, I had to load my car, I had to load the trailer, I had to do that, but also like there was a level of anxiety of talking to people at the merch booth because that's not really what I was good at. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I've had to talk about the Den so much, I've actually gotten kind of comfortable with it. So. it's talking about to the different city officials, talking about to banks and to podcasts and people that want to get involved, and people just have questions.
Yeah,
like people. I mean, at least once a week, I'll get the question like, "How can we support the Den?" I'm like, "Follow the Den."
Right.
Talk to these bands. Talk to these. Keep the local music scene alive, because if we don't have a local music scene, we don't have a national music scene.
Right, yeah.
If there's no place for a band to start, there's going to be no place for a band to go. So,
well, man, I appreciate you taking gosh, we've talked for 2 hours, man. Okay,
holy crap. Yeah.
I need to let you go.
I did not realize that it was that long.
I didn't realize it until I just looked down and I saw 150. Shit. Okay, well, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for talking to me. I had no idea I was taking 2 hours out of your day.
I didn't either. My phone was on silent, so I was like, all right.
Yeah, me too. Well, yeah, make sure everyone go and come to the Den. Check out local music. This way you can support a local music scene, and you can support Tony and all of his endeavors out here. And thanks so much for chatting with us, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Piedmont Triad Podcast. Big thanks to Tony from the Den for talking to us and taking a large chunk out of his day to discuss the Den and all of its awesome facets. Make sure you jump on them and give them a follow at The Den Shows on Instagram. Also, a big thanks to Matt Smith and the Cowboy Spankers again for letting us use their song Not Tonight as the unofficial theme song for the Piedmont Triad Podcast. Also, a big thanks to my friend Brian Falk, who is the resident artist for the Piedmont Triad Podcast and who has provided us with some great artwork over the years. Make sure to reach out to him at his Gmail address, which is wellfalkna@gmail.com. That is WELLFAULKNA@gmail.com, and he will be sure to get you a nice solid piece of artwork if you decide you want to commission a local artist. And a big thanks to you for listening once again. Until next time, Piedmont.
Should keep on moving. You're like the devil when the sun goes down. Stay away from me. Well, I'm too far gone. There ain't nothing here to see, babe. So you best just move along.